On Press Perspective today, we bring you the latest with regard to former President Yoon Suk Yeol's fate over his martial law attempt and big wins for Netflix sensation K-pop Demon Hunters at the Golden Globes. Welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, January 16th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. It's that time of the week yet again during which we touch upon a host of stories related to South Korea covered by the foreign media. And today they start with calls for capital punishment and end with a new craze over chewy chocolate cookies. For more on this, I have Ruy Valdes with Spanish news agency EFE Spain here in the studio. Ruy, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Glad to be here again.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on the day's topics. Colin, it's lovely to have you here.
Good to be here as always.
Ruy, we shall start with you. Let's begin with the foreign media's coverage of the death penalty sought by the prosecution for former President Yoon Suk Yeol on charges of insurrection. What has been the foreign media's focus?
The foreign media, of course, in all the headlines, noted that the prosecutors requested the death penalty for a former president, which is big news all over the place in any country, for any country. Of course, as they should, everybody explains that South Korea is a de facto abolitionist on death sentence, so it hasn't applied the death sentence since 1997. There's around 60 inmates on death row, but nobody since that time, and nobody has been executed. So the interpretation is that the prosecutors are seeking more of a symbolic punishment, so requesting the maximum penalty to somehow tell the public that the crimes that Yoon Suk Yeol is accused of are of the highest gravity. So, being that said, they also explain in detail what happened since the application of the martial law, how this was considered by the Constitutional Court as anti-constitutional. And they also compared the cases of former presidents Chun Do-hwan and Roh Tae-woo. These two presidents were convicted also, especially Chun, who was convicted also as to death, but then his sentence was reduced to life imprisonment, and afterwards he was pardoned. The same thing with Roh Tae-woo, which has a high penalty, life sentence, but then he was pardoned. So in general, in foreign media, the experts that had been interviewed, they are saying that, well, not all, but many of them are saying that they believe at some point when the heat goes down, Yoon Suk Yeol might be pardoned in the long term. Of course, this is not certain. He has not been sentenced, so we don't know. Maybe he is called innocent, so we still have to wait. But this request, of course, when we say the word death penalty, death sentence, makes a lot of noise, and it was the case this time.
Right. And in the meantime then, Colin, what more can you tell us about the social implications of this call for capital punishment by the prosecution, that is the special prosecutors?
This particular development, I think, ties together various threads of Korean socio-political culture, shall we say, that have stood out to me over the years. One of them being, as Ruy was mentioning, or as viewers might gather from what he was saying, being the president of the Republic of Korea, it can be a bad job, partially because of the fate presidents tend to end up receiving. Usually they don't meet good ends, these presidents. Sometimes bad legal ends. They get charged with crimes, tried, jailed, given sentences of life imprisonment or death, as we mentioned. And usually, always, these sentences are commuted or they're pardoned. Things like that happen. The result is not as drastic as the verdict handed down. So you do wonder, at least foreign observers do wonder, what are we doing with this recommendation? We know it probably won't be, probably won't be the verdict. We know the verdict probably won't be the result. We know they're going to get off in some sense or another in the end. So what are we doing? And partially, this resonates with one aspect that keeps getting brought up, keeps getting cited, an aspect of Yoon Suk Yeol's behavior, which is that allegedly he has not apologized sufficiently or sincerely enough. We've always emphasized the sincerity is lacking in Yoon Suk Yeol's contrition or lack thereof for his actions, for the call for martial law. And we can all think of comparable cases in this sense that when the sincerity of somebody's apology is called into question, you know there is no amount of sincerity that will ever pass muster. And I think Yoon Suk Yeol, whatever his other qualities, understands the society well enough to know he would never be able to abase himself enough to satisfy his detractors or to satisfy the courts. It just won't happen. So better off, I think, to his mind, not to try at all. But the question that's the biggest one of all these, and one that gets the least considered, I think, is who put him in office? Yoon Suk Yeol was not a military dictator. He wasn't Chon Du-hwan. He was legitimately elected. I think that election, his election is not genuinely contested. It's not that questionable, I would say, or in some ways not at all. And so, yes, the Korean people elected him. And rather than reflecting on that, rather than reflecting on what that means and what about perhaps the political mindset should change going forward, I think the enemies of Yoon Suk Yeol, including those among the Korean people who consider him to be the great evil of today, they will simply revel in the catharsis of this recommendation for the death penalty and I think not think about it any further, which is unfortunate.
Right. So the prosecutors have called for the death penalty. The actual court verdict is scheduled for February 19th. That is after the Lunar New Year holiday. Some believe that President Yoon Suk Yeol, former President Yoon Suk Yeol that is, may become a martyr if he is indeed sentenced to death. Could you tell us a bit more about this view?
Yes, some observers says that in fact, if he gets the death sentence by the court, some people will interpret, especially his followers, of course, as a political persecution instead of justice. So, in that sense, many scholars and observers believe that maybe if he gets life imprisonment, it will be less controversial, or it will create less trouble or less protest, because they will believe that people who get death sentence, it's almost like a symbol of, that could become like martyrdom, as you mentioned, or this political persecution. Colin, just to debate a little bit, Colin was mentioning something very important, I believe, that is, of course, that he was elected, and also what we don't know is how the judges will interpret the potential consequence of the martial law. What I mean with this is that in the case of the coup d'etat that happened previously and the former presidents that were accused, this stayed in power for a long time, but we know that Yoon Suk Yeol martial law lasted very few hours, meaning that we couldn't see, maybe in a good way, the real consequence of the permanence of the martial law. So it will be very important to know how the judges will interpret this, if it was a failed martial law, but it had consequences that could have been lethal or for other major problems, and this could. This interpretation will be key for the punishment. Now, going back to what we say, since we're talking about interpretations and how the public will see it, yes, what many are pointing out is that the highest punishment of death sentence could even create more political problems, even for the current government. So they believe the court's smart choice would be a life sentence. But this remains to be seen, as we said. And there's also another thing. It seems very hard for him to get pardoned. It's harder to get pardoned if he gets the life sentence. Like, it will have to be a complex process to get him the sentence reduced. But if he gets life sentence, it seems that he could find an easier way to get pardoned in legal terms. So this also would maybe make it easier for the public to say, well, maybe in the future there will be some kind of solution and he won't be all his life in prison. But, well, as we say, that remains to be seen.
Right. The former leader faces a total of 8 trials, Ruy, and earlier on this Friday, he saw the first court verdict with regard to charges of obstruction of justice by evading arrest following his martial law attempt on the night of December 3rd, 2024. Could you tell us a bit about that verdict?
Yes, this is, as you mentioned, the first verdict out of 8 trials that he's facing. Some are related to the martial law, some related to other issues. He got today a 5 years sentence in prison, and the prosecutors were asking for a penalty of 10. So this also could be a marker of, well, maybe each court is not going to follow entirely what the prosecutors are asking, and we have to see how they interpret the crimes that President Yoon Suk Yeol committed or allegedly committed. In this sense, still, it's a major issue that a former president, just recently ousted, is sentenced to prison just today. The court did say the crimes were very serious, and as Colin was mentioned, the judge took time to say that former President Yoon Suk Yeol has shown no remorse at any point. These comments are also important because they might, in a way, if not affect the pending trials, they also could affect public opinion, because we're seeing a reminder of the people, the detractors of Yoon Suk Yeol, or people that believe that he acted wrongly, that he's not showing forgiveness or remorse since all this started. As we mentioned, the main the main focus is in the trial that will be in mid-February after Solal, and we will know if the court decides to apply a death penalty, to sentence him to death penalty or less. And yeah, but still, just to review fast the things he was accused of, today the court determined that he obstructed arrest attempts and destroyed evidence, that he militarized the Presidential Security Service to block his detention in January 3rd, that he falsified a public document tied to the emergency decree, and that he excluded dissented ministers from the meeting held previous to the martial law imposition. He was acquitted for one thing. He was cleared of the charge of dissemination of false information to foreign press, but all of the other charges, to a degree, he was the court confirmed they were crimes.
Right, which is why the court sentenced him to 5 years in prison for obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Colin, let's now move on to some very exciting news, if you will. Netflix sensation K-pop Demon Hunters won 2 awards at the Golden Globes, one for Best Animated Feature and another for Best Original Song. The response here in South Korea was electric, to say the least. What was the response back in the US?
In the US, the Golden Globes are seen as sort of the precursor to the Oscars, or a bellwether for the Oscars, which usually happen in February or March. And so if a film does well at the Golden Globes, it doesn't necessarily sweep the Academy Awards, but it is a good sign, especially if that film has performed well at other smaller award shows, various critic circles or film festivals, that sort of thing. And K-pop Demon Hunters has won dozens of critics awards, regional critics awards, things like that. And so it's a fairly strong, it's looking like a fairly strong contender, you could say. But I should go back to Netflix itself. You mentioned it is a Netflix production. It debuted on Netflix in many countries at once. And that, I think, is key to understanding the Golden Globes wins, because unlike the Oscars, which is, the Oscars are voted on by members of the Academy, they're film professionals in the US, the Golden Globes are voted on by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which is composed of contributors to publications, international publications, covering the doings of Hollywood. And so because this film, K-pop Demon Hunters, was available across the world at once, no sort of staggered openings, it didn't sort of start in the US and move outward, you got a lot of attention paid to it immediately around the world. And so it became quite a subject to cover in the foreign press, in the international press, about Hollywood, because it is, of course, a Hollywood production, despite being unofficially Koreanized, shall we say, or adopted as something Korean, especially here in Korea. So I think in the US and Korea alike, the eyes will be on the Oscars coming up in a month or two, seeing how K-pop Demon Hunters will do. I don't think it's going to go home empty-handed, but we'll see if Best Animated Feature is in the cards or not.
Right, and staying with the critical acclaim over Netflix's K-pop Demon Hunters, Ruy, it has garnered 4 Grammy nominations, I believe. What has been shared about the foreign media's outlook with regard to the prospects for K-pop this year at the Grammys, Ruy?
Yeah, as Colin was mentioned, K-pop Demon Hunters have dominated film industry, but also the music industry. And regarding the Grammys and these nominations, of course, it stands out that Golden, the main song, earns the nod for Song of the Year. K-pop has never won a Grammy despite years of global success, so it might be that a fictional group of K-pop will be the first one to break this barrier, and the chances look quite high. If we look back at all the records that this song broke, like they were in the head of main global charts or main music charts, Billboard and in the UK and all across the board. So yeah, there's a big chance that we see them getting at least one of these prizes. Some media are interpreting this even like a new step of K-pop, like a post-idol stage of K-pop, because, well, I don't know if you have seen the movie, but in the original version, the songs are mostly in English. They have pieces of Korean, but they are mostly in English. So they say that somehow K-pop found a way to connect with the Western audiences with the prevalence of English language and other elements that make it more attractive for these audiences. K-pop is also, again, in a hot moment with the announcements of BTS coming back soon. Blackpink recently announced a new album. So there's a momentum in K-pop. So probably even the music industry is seeing this very seriously and saying maybe this is the moment to finally give a Grammy. I think there's not really a debate if K-pop one day will win one of major award, but it's just in the Grammys, but just a matter of who's gonna make it. And yeah, this time there's a big chance that K-pop Demon Hunters make it. As Colin was mentioning, there's just so many things they have won. Even in the film, the Golden Globes, but also the Critic Choice Awards. Korea, as Colin was mentioned, has adopted this as a national almost phenomenon, even though it's a Hollywood production, and they gave like Okwan Order of Cultural Merit to the co-director Maggie Kang. So it's really the phenomenon of the year. I could tell you personally from my own office, every time there's news like this, would get it almost as a priority, like because there's so much hunger that's still for the product to see him succeed. And this is all over the world, Latin America, etc. And well, let's see what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happens next month. And speaking about hunger, Ruy, a Dubai chocolate-inspired dessert. It's making headlines here in Korea and elsewhere, with people standing in line for hours to get a piece of it. Could you tell us a bit more about this dessert?
Yes, it's the Dujjongku. Correct me if I'm wrong, I read this, but I haven't validated with a Korean-speaking person. They say the do is because of Dubai, chon because it's chewy and stretchy texture, and ku is just like a cute colloquial idiom that Koreans put at the end of the word.
Cookie, I think.
From cookie, so it would be like a chewy Dubai cookie, something like that. This is made with pistachio cream, kanef pastry shreds, and it's wrapped in chocolate-flavored marshmallow. It's been a huge hit. People in Korea are demanding it a lot. I was telling you before the start of the show that I just arrived from Mexico, and the first thing I ate when I arrived from Mexico was Dujjongku. Because of my wife, she was like, oh, this is supposed to be very hot, let's try it out. So I can tell you by personal experience that it's very good, it's quite delicious. You can tell the pistachio is kind of like mushy, like chewy, and it has like some kind of juice you can even feel maybe from pistachio. At the same time, it's quite pricey. And this has been pointed out too. Well, you can find it from ranges of prices from 5,000 to 10,000 won, but we'll say like, I don't know, $4 to almost $10, $4 to $8. And the pastry is this size. So in my case, we paid like 8,000 won per piece. It did hurt my wallet, but well, at least we enjoy it. This has been, why it got so popular, one of the reasons was Jang Won-young, one of the members of EFE, the K-pop group, posted in Instagram last September of eating these snacks or cookies, as you want to call them. And now the shop sells hundreds within minutes. Colin was telling us how they open even in smaller cafes and they get sold out. The pistachio prices in Korea have skyrocketed, and the producers are saying that it's related to the phenomenon of Dujjongku. So yeah, right now it's the hot pastry of Korea, quite delicious, but hurts your wallet.
Right, Dujjongku is making headlines, like I said before. Colin, how do you care to explain this craze over Dujjongku?
Yes, it is inescapable and has quickly become inescapable, even in my own part of town. And I live in by no means a fashionable part of Seoul, which is one thing I like about it. But walking around, all the cafes, the coffee shops have signs saying that they sell these Dujjongku, and that they're out. Typically. So they'll put them out, they'll post to Instagram, or we put them out 4 o'clock, by 4:15 they're out, they're gone, they're sold out, pumjol. That said, I've tried them a few times here and there, and they do vary quite a lot. So I think part of the appeal for people is you never know if you're going to get a good one or not. You never know how good it's going to be, because sometimes people accuse them, oh, this isn't so good, that this is the wrong kind of noodles. They used Korean noodles and fried them, or maybe this is peanut butter. It's not right, it's not pistachio. So getting the one where everything's right is not that easy. But also, you know, it's a craze, and it brings to mind buldak, fire chicken from 10, 15 years ago, honey butter chips, which for a while there, people were resorting to subterfuge to try to acquire, you couldn't get them. Now, you know, you can't see a buldak restaurant, you can hardly find one, and honey butter chips, I guess they exist, but no one talks about them, they're not up front. And so I think with this particular Dujjongku, you know, people want to get in while it's hot, while you can boast about having them. And they're good, like on a basic level. They're chewy, they're chocolatey, they're a little salty, so they have that contrast of flavors and a sort of combination of a bunch of different flavors at once, a very Korean sort of form of appeal to the taste buds. But I think partially just the fact that there's such a sheer run on them, everyone's doing it, it's not going to be interesting to people in a few months, let's say. But I feel like the Dubai chocolate craze itself, that has become passé in the rest of the world. Korea has found a way to keep it going, which is very characteristic.
Right, through Dujjongku, right?
Through Dujjongku, yes.
Okay. All right, we'll end it on that then. Thank you so much, Colin, for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Ruy, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you, Sunhee.
Right, on that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. Do have a great weekend. Join us again same time next Monday for more panel discussion.